All right, guys, I have removed the call in from the top of the feed because I'm going to wrap it up after these two callers, and I hope they're good ones. I think this next one is going to be we have Sleepy Eyes Carter.
Hey, what's up, sis?
Hello.
What's up? What's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You have a good energy about you. I was watching you in the backstage area. I was like, this guy's going to
Oh,
be good.
are you silly? Nah, on a serious note, though, and in a good note, I love your work, Ma. Just continue
Oh.
to do what you do. I actually did a video. I don't know if you ever saw it, but encouraging you because you did a video some time ago where
Oh.
you was like really frustrated with the direction that the Republican Party is going, like just basically like bombing on the cowards, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was like your biggest thing. And my biggest thing is this: the conservatives, ideals, Republican Party. It's not going to change overnight. We need voices like you. So I'm a
Mhm.
conservative. I'm not a Republican. I'm independent. I changed to independent. I went from Democrat to independent. I don't know why I was why I was a Democrat, just simply because of course, the the natural progression of society and how they place you in your buckets and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But critical race theory is something that you've been talking about a lot. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I do want to say this in regards to that. I think people get a misunderstanding on those who are combating critical race theory. I think they think that we're against like the teaching of slavery, the teaching of racism. That's not the case.
Right.
No, that's not the case. I think we're all for talking about how legislation, how laws of the past have affected groups of people. My biggest issue is simply is number one, if we're going to talk about it, then let's talk about it in the proper sphere from the width, the depth, and the height, right? So, what I mean by that is simply this. Don't just talk about it from how it negatively affected Black people, but let's talk about it how it negatively and positively affected all groups of people within America. So,
Yeah.
that's the thing. So, critical race theory is being pitched as something that just wants to really study the historicity of how laws have affected groups of people, but the undergirdedness of it is that it wants to say that, well, America and everything about it is still systemically racist and oppressive to Black people. So if you're not like colorblind, obviously I'm Black. And I have told many people I am not oppressed, I'm not a victim, I'm not held back. And I think the thing that they don't realize is simply this: we're opposed to my children sitting in a class with white kids or any other kids, and they're going to be taught this child over here, because of his skin color, has privilege. And here's the thing: if you just simply say that, you secretly also let my children know who are Black that they don't have a privilege, that
Yeah.
they're all oppressed, they're the bastard childs of society. I don't teach that in my home. I teach my children that their success is not tied to their skin color; it's tied to their brain. Right? I teach them, because you're created in the image of God and after His likeness, you can achieve and subdue your goals and dreams in the wildest fashion you would ever want to. I have a little girl, so according to critical race theory and according to the way that things are being taught, she's like double dipped in the pot of oppression, right? She's a woman, plus she's Black. So, I mean, she's all jacked up right in life. But I don't teach my daughter that. I don't put that weight up on her. But last thing, and I'm gonna let you know because I know you got another caller, sis. But I do. I want your thoughts on this. If we're going to teach this thing, I'm all for legislation being looked at from a academia perspective. But what if we did it like this? I bet this would tick off a lot of people if we actually did it like this.
All right.
Let's take slavery for instance. The
Mm-hmm.
common theme amongst the Black community is that we were stolen from Africa. That's the common biggest lie to ever tell another person. We were stolen from Africa. What if we started the conversation about slavery on this? Slavery at this time was a common commodity amidst people of different groups and nations actually made commerce with each other, from prisoners of war, from people that they actually stole from different camps and stuff like that. It was a common means by which I would trade humans for spices. Let's start
Mm-hmm.
there. If we started there, it would change the perspective on how we actually look at the trickle effect of what slavery as a whole did. Because then we would have to charge every world with the blood of slave on their hands, right?
Right.
Right? Well, what if
Yeah.
we did this? Well, what if we did this? What if we did this? And what if we actually stated that there were, I don't want to get the people group wrong. I don't want to say that they were necessarily Arabian or Arabs or anything like that, but they enslaved more Africans than Europeans. What if we started there? Let's start there. If we're gonna lay the hammer down, let's start there. Well, let's go a little further. Let's take up like my man who was on before you, the friendly debater. which he has some really great points that I think me and you both kind of can understand and agree with, because I love how you said and explained the reparation aspect.
Right.
Let's take for instance affirmative action. I love people who bring up affirmative action, right? So on the positive side, the people who are proponents for affirmative action would say something like this, sis. They would say, yo, it was the means by which the middle class expanded. True. And it was the means by which we could get into institutions we probably would have been denied. That's true. Even jobs. True. All right. Well, we got to flip the coin, because if we're going to actually study this thing from the full spectrum of which legislation both positively and negatively affects the community, you can't look at the negative to prove your point and dismiss the positive, and you can't look at the positive to prove your point and dismiss the negative. You miss the full picture, because if we want to have equality and equity, we need to actually talk about it from both sides of the spectrum and not just one side of our butt cheeks. So let's take affirmative action for instance. Okay, and watch this. Yes, it expanded, but it also was a means by which it lowered the standard by which me as a Black man would reach academic wise, therefore putting me inside a category to where when I was academically mismatched to go to prestigious colleges, I actually would perform at the bottom of the class.
Yep.
Or I would be more of a proponent to be dropping out of said class. Mm-hmm. But when California went to a blind basis of you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah. It basically was on your academic merit, right? Mm-hmm. They noticed that people who were Black and Latino actually performed better in schools they was academically matched with. But then they also noticed the dropout rate decreased, because it's almost like taking a high school ninth grader and putting him into an NBA league and expecting him to perform at the optimal elite level that these people play at, right? He wouldn't be third bench, he'd be water boy probably, because he wouldn't be able to compete. Now, there will be some exceptions to the rule, but you don't take the exceptions of a small percentage, meaning that you don't take 1% and make legislation off of 1% to govern the 99. You don't do that, right?
Right.
It's not logical aspects of things.
It's a law of unintended consequences. They don't think through these things. And it's right. And it's also, I mean, I can also imagine too, like, you know, even like, let's just say that you were the exception to the rule and you were like highly academically qualified and and you know, let's just say that the affirmative action was the reason you got into the school, even though maybe you were the exception. Wouldn't you always be questioning of like, why did I end up in the, was it really because I earned it? Was it really because I work hard, or was it because of the color of my skin? Because I'll tell you what, like, you know, as you know, before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of keynote speaking, and there was this trend with conferences where all like conferences were saying we're only going to hire women speakers. And on one hand, it's like, okay, cool. I mean, that's more job opportunities. But on the other hand, I was like, I don't want to be hired because I'm a woman. I want to be because I've worked really hard to get really good at this. And I want to be hired because I'm the absolute best person to do it. And I found the whole thing really offensive, to be honest.
Well, the interesting thing is, and this is my issue with a lot of the stuff that is going on, is, and I push back on it. Like I do my Facebook lives and I push back on it. I make my posts and push back on it. And what I see is in the effort to want to be accepted for being an American, mm-hmm. Where it seems as if we're putting race before the horse, but we're thinking that is going to get us to the means of the end, when it just causes more division. But not only that, the aspect of it is just simply this. And people might disagree with me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I don't give two rests into a nickel out of a fish's mouth, be honest with you. There is no such thing as equality in the spectrum of what we're trying to reach. To create equality, you must create inequality. It's an inevitable cycle, right? But it's how you go about it. The only thing America, as a constitutional aspect of society, should promise and should protect as far as our constitutional rights is justice, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, all those things under the Constitution. But you being I'll give you an example. I represent 13% of the population.
Right.
We're trying to fit 13% of the population into all these different categories. Like where the lie at? Where the lie at, Craig? We're trying to fit 13% of our population into every single facet of successful life. Right. Of successful life. Okay, we're underrepresented in this. We need to have, and so what you do is you end up diminishing the competitive value of achieving a goal. Because back to affirmative action, if we're going to teach it all the way, then we also have to teach that Asians, who are some of the top money percenters, which is one of the smallest minority groups in America, outperforms financially, outperforms educationally. And they're suing schools because they are not being allowed to enter to the schools because they're trying to actually increase their demographics of Black people or Hispanics, to increase the numbers simply because you want to look like you're part of the woke mob or look like you're part of the crew. It doesn't mean that you're really down. And I always tell this to people. When corporations start taking notice of your movement, you might want to be cautious because they see a cash grab. Right. They're not down for you. They're down to either protect their bottom line or they see a means by which they can increase their bottom line. And last thing, and I'm gone, sis, I'm serious on this.
That's okay.
The Arizona. Shout out to the Supreme Court. Arizona. Shout out to the Supreme Court for upholding Arizona voting laws. I don't understand how the voting laws that Arizona has put in. I live in Georgia. The Department of Justice is suing the Georgia state legislature because of their voting law. I read that voting law. I went live on my Facebook and I told them straight up and down, my people, because a lot of the people I politic are either liberal or leaning, and we're not talking about the actual what a liberal is, but they're liberal leaning towards more so the left. But I was like, I see nothing wrong with telling a person that you have to show ID. Like, who the heck and who the why? And stop using so I'll give you an example. When they bring up like voting laws that deal with minorities in a negative way, and they're talking about like having to get voter registration or voter IDs and having to show your birth certificate and all that stuff, they always bring up the bald-headed, wig-wearing, no teeth having grandma that lives out there in somebody's country backwoods that honestly is like 9,500 years old. They never bring up a 33-year-old or a 40-year-old. No. They always bring up the old woman that can't find the candy at the bottom of her purse. No disrespect to the old people on the stream. I'm just saying that's the example they give us all the time and everything like that. But I love PragerU because they actually send out people to do interviews, and people is like, who doesn't have an ID? I talk to my kids about this stuff all the time. You was just speaking about talking to your children. No, somebody was just on here and you was even talking about it, talking to your children on a level where you're talking about this. So me and my children have open conversations, and we've been having open conversations for years about a lot of different stuff. And I'm amazed that they have a mind frame of that don't make no sense without me tainting their ideas of what makes or doesn't make sense, because I just present them with the facts. I don't present them with the tainted ideal of the facts.
Well, you've taught them how to think and not what to think, it sounds like. Hey, listen, is this your YouTube channel right here? Crackpots?
Yeah, that's me. That's
you. Well, we've got your YouTube channel, Pimp. You have got a lot of new fans in the chat. They're really excited. They want me to clip this, and I assure you I will. And I'll link to your channel when we do that. But thank you for
appreciate that. Keep giving them the businesses. Don't quit. You better not stop. I'm putting my foot knee deep up in your behind. Please don't stop, because you opened up my eyes for a lot.
Keep me accountable, okay?
Yes,
I appreciate that.
A lot. Be safe. Peace.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.